Imagine, if you will, the city of Paris at the turn of the 20th century. The Eiffel Tower was newly built, the streets bustling with artists, thinkers, and dreamers. Cafes spilled their warm light onto cobblestones, and the city thrummed with life and promise. Yet, hidden behind the elegant facades and the charm of the City of Light was a shadowy secret, a story so harrowing it would send shockwaves through Parisian society. On a seemingly ordinary day in May 1901, the peaceful routine of a stately townhouse on Rue de l'Université was shattered. Behind a locked door in the attic lay Blanche Monnier, a woman who had not seen daylight for 28 years. She was discovered in a filthy, windowless room, emaciated, covered in wounds, and almost blind. The story of how she came to be imprisoned there is a chilling tale of love, control, and societal cruelty. Blanche Monnier was once a lively young woman from a well-off Parisian family. She had dreams, hopes, and, most importantly, love. A forbidden love. Her mother, Louise Monnier, a formidable and stern woman, was obsessed with protecting the family's reputation. When Blanche's love affair was deemed unacceptable, her mother locked her away, sealing her fate in darkness. This is the story of Blanche Monnier, the woman who disappeared from society, but never from the shadows of history. To understand the horror of Blanche Monnier's imprisonment, we must first step back and explore who she was before her world turned upside down. Born in 1868, Blanche was the youngest daughter of the Monnier family, a name that carried weight in Parisian society. Her father, Antoine Monnier, was a respected lawyer, and her mother, Louise, was known for her strict adherence to social conventions and an almost obsessive desire to maintain the family's honor at all costs. Blanche was, by all accounts, a bright and gentle young woman, beloved by those close to her. She had a keen mind and a love for literature and music, but what truly set her heart aflame was a young man named Émile. Émile was not of the same social standing as the Monnier family, a fact that was, in the eyes of her mother, a glaring flaw. When Louise discovered the relationship, her reaction was swift and merciless. She forbade Blanche from seeing Émile again, threatening disgrace and ruin if she disobeyed. Blanche, like many young lovers before her, could not relinquish her feelings. Her defiance became the catalyst for the nightmare to come. One evening in 1876, when Blanche was just 18, her mother enacted a cruel and unusual punishment. She had Blanche locked in the attic room of their family home, a tiny, windowless chamber usually used for storage. The door was secured with two locks, one held by Louise herself, the other by a trusted servant, ensuring that no one could enter or leave without permission. From that moment on, Blanche's world was reduced to a dark box where time seemed to stand still. The bustling life of Paris carried on outside, but inside that room, the years stretched endlessly, marked only by the sound of footsteps passing below, and the occasional echo of distant voices. Her cries and pleas were ignored or punished. Food was meager and barely nourishing. Water was scarce and cold. The air grew stale, filled with the smell of mold and neglect. Rats and insects became her only companions in that suffocating silence. Blanche's health deteriorated rapidly. Her once radiant face became gaunt and pale, her hair tangled and matted. But perhaps more devastating was the toll on her spirit. The relentless isolation and fear broke her mind in ways that no one outside the attic could truly comprehend. Yet, despite the despair, Blanche held on. She clung to memories of love, light, and freedom. Faint sparks in the engulfing darkness, Nearly 3 decades passed in silence, but secrets have a way of escaping even the most carefully locked rooms. The world outside was changing. Paris grew with new technology and ideas, and society grappled with progress and tradition. Yet, in the Monnier household, time seemed frozen in a cruel paradox. The turning point came unexpectedly in 1901. Marcel Monnier, Blanche's brother, who had long been estranged from his mother, discovered the terrible truth. Hidden away in the attic was not just an unused room, but his sister, imprisoned and suffering. It was Marcel's anonymous letter sent to the authorities that led to the dramatic rescue. The letter described the unimaginable conditions Blanche was enduring and begged for intervention. This act of courage broke the silence and set into motion a legal and social storm. On the afternoon of May 23, 1901, police officers forced open the door to Blanche's prison. What they found defied belief. Blanche was curled up on a pile of dirty rags, barely able to stand, weighed down by years of neglect and abuse. She was covered in sores and filth. Her eyes, clouded and weak, had been deprived of sunlight for so long they were almost useless. The attic itself was a nightmare. Walls blackened by mold, a floor strewn with garbage and animal droppings. The air was thick and foul. The officers, shocked and horrified, quickly took Blanche into protective custody. The news of her discovery spread like wildfire. Newspapers across France splashed the story on their front pages, dubbing her La Séquestrée de Poitiers, the imprisoned woman of Poitiers, though the actual location was Paris. Readers were horrified and fascinated, captivated by the grotesque mystery of a woman lost to the darkness for nearly 3 decades. Questions poured in. How could her mother justify such cruelty? How could society have ignored the cries of a captive? The story exposed deep fractures in the social fabric, the iron grip of family honor, the silence around domestic abuse, and the limits of legal protection. Blanche was immediately admitted to Hôtel Dieu, the oldest hospital in Paris, where doctors began the painstaking work of assessing her physical and mental condition. The shocking rescue of Blanche Monnier ignited a firestorm in Parisian society. Newspapers sensationalized the case, with headlines that ranged from outraged denunciations to morbid fascination. The public was desperate to understand how a woman could be hidden away for so long, right under the noses of neighbors and friends. The central figure of blame was, of course, Louise Monnier, Blanche's mother. A woman of stern demeanor and rigid principles, Louise was a staunch believer in family honor and societal expectations. To her, Blanche's love affair was a stain that could ruin everything. Louise, however, did not live long after the scandal broke. 15 days following Blanche's rescue, she died. Some say from shock and shame, others from an underlying illness worsened by stress. Her death ensured that she never faced a trial, leaving many questions unanswered. Blanche's brother Marcel, who had sent the letter to authorities, was accused of complicity in the crime. Many wondered how he could have allowed such abuse to continue for years without intervening. Marcel was arrested and subjected to intense public scrutiny. Yet, after investigation, Marcel was acquitted due to insufficient evidence that he actively participated in or condoned the imprisonment. This verdict sparked further debate, polarizing public opinion. Some sympathized with him as another victim of a twisted family dynamic. Others saw him as a coward who failed his sister. The trial and media circus exposed uncomfortable truths about the social order. The case highlighted the legal system's inability to protect vulnerable individuals, especially women, within the domestic sphere. It also brought attention to the oppressive power wielded by parents and the silence maintained by neighbors and society at large. Behind the sensational headlines, Blanche remained a fragile figure, struggling to reclaim her identity and her life after decades of darkness. To truly grasp the horror of Blanche Monnier's ordeal, we must try to imagine the reality of her daily life during those 28 years of captivity. A world reduced to a single cramped room. No windows to the outside world, no fresh air, no light but a faint crack beneath the door. This was her entire universe. The room was tiny, about 2 meters by 3 meters, filled with garbage, mold, and vermin. The walls were blackened by dampness and dirt, and the floor was littered with remnants of old food and the droppings of rats and insects. The smell was overwhelming, a mix of rot, decay, and neglect that would haunt anyone's senses. Blanche was given the bare minimum to survive: a few scraps of food, water, and meager clothing. She was forced to live among rats and cockroaches, sharing her dark prison with creatures she once might have feared. The psychological toll was immense. Years of sensory deprivation, social isolation, and physical suffering gradually chipped away at her sanity. Without sunlight, her body's internal clock was disrupted. Without human contact, her mind was starved of connection. Yet, despite this bleak existence, Blanche's spirit did not entirely break. She retained fragments of memory and hope. She reportedly sang songs quietly to herself, recalling moments of happiness from her past. Her mind clung to memories of sunlight, laughter, and love, faint beacons in the darkness. It is hard to overstate how remarkable it was that Blanche survived at all. Her physical health was severely compromised. She weighed only around 25 kilograms when found, bones protruding beneath thin skin. But perhaps the greatest miracle was the survival of her humanity, hidden yet unextinguished in that forgotten attic. Her story forces us to confront the darkest corners of human cruelty, but also to recognize the resilience of the human spirit when faced with unimaginable suffering. Blanche Monnier's rescue marked the beginning of a long and difficult journey, not just toward physical recovery, but toward reclaiming her identity and dignity after nearly 3 decades of unimaginable trauma. Immediately after her discovery, Blanche was admitted to Hôtel Dieu Hospital, where a team of doctors and nurses attended to her battered body. Her weight was dangerously low, and her skin was riddled with sores and infections. The medical team faced the enormous challenge of restoring her physical health step by step. But healing Blanche's body was only part of the battle. The psychological scars she carried were deep and complex. Years of isolation, neglect, and abuse had left her vulnerable to depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress. Doctors observed signs of psychosis, hallucinations, and confused memories, symptoms of her prolonged sensory deprivation and emotional trauma. Caregivers worked patiently, encouraging Blanche to rediscover basic functions, walking unaided, eating properly, and, most importantly, trusting again. Reintroducing her to light and the outside world was a gradual, careful process. Too much stimulation at once could overwhelm her fragile mind. Despite setbacks, Blanche made slow but steady progress. She began to speak again, though often in fragmented sentences. She showed moments of clarity, recalling her family, her past loves, and fragments of her confinement. Yet, some memories remained painfully elusive, locked away behind the trauma. Parisian society largely turned away from her story after the initial shock wore off, leaving Blanche to live quietly, out of the public eye. She never fully recovered, both physically and emotionally, but her survival itself was a testament to resilience. Blanche's experience inspired debates in medical and social circles about the long-term effects of psychological trauma, the necessity of mental health care, and the rights of those imprisoned or abused within families. Blanche Monnier passed away in 1913, just over a decade after her dramatic rescue. Her life, though marked by unimaginable suffering, left an indelible mark on history, a haunting reminder of the shadows lurking beneath society's polished surface. In the years following her death, her story faded from public memory, relegated to obscure footnotes in history books and sensational newspaper clippings. Yet, the tale of the woman locked away in a dark attic continues to evoke a powerful mix of horror, compassion, and reflection. Blanche's story forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about the nature of cruelty, not only from strangers, but from those closest to us. It reveals how societal pressures, obsession with reputation, and silence around domestic abuse can trap victims in cycles of suffering. Her ordeal also highlights the limits of legal and social systems in protecting the vulnerable, especially women, within the private sphere of the family. It serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power and isolation. More importantly, Blanche Monnier's legacy is one of resilience. Despite decades of darkness and despair, her survival is a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit. Her story urges us to listen to those hidden in silence, to challenge social taboos, and to ensure that no one else is forgotten in the shadows. As we close this chapter, let us remember Blanche not only as a victim, but as a symbol, a somber warning, and a call for compassion and justice.